This morning's training is going to be for contract requests, creating them, entering them. We'll talk about the workflow, what some of the information is used for. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Tammy Prater. She's one of the folks who works in our office and kind of keeps these things going, keeps the workflows up to date, does a lot of hard work in the background. So she's going to walk you through and show how to enter it, why it's important, what we use it for. If you've got questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We've got a few folks that can try to answer those best we can, or we'll jump in and try to get Tammy to answer it for us. So, Miss Tammy, are you able to share your screen?
No, I'm not.
All right, let me get that done. All right, see if it works now.
Sorry about that if you're seeing my cows. Hi, everybody. What I wanted to, I have a test request I just created this morning, and I'm just going to go over what we call drilling down to the department. With a lot of turnover the last year or so, this information gets lost in the training sometimes. And I can send out documentation on this as well, but this is very important for those of you that remember the contract transmittal form, the paper form that we used to use. The selecting of the department is very important because it runs the workflow. So right now I have the finance and business services selected, and this is what my workflow looks like because I did not drill down all the way to my department. So you always make sure that you have the correct system member ID selected. I'm going to go back to this department name to select. I'm just going to select contract administration. So you see I have a bullet. There's a bullet next to finance and business services. There's also an arrow. So we arrow or drill down or arrow down until there's no longer an arrow. That means that, so there are no more arrows here. So selecting a department here is drilling down to your department, selecting the correct department. So I hit save changes and you'll see that I have contract administration there now. I'm going to save progress. And then if we look at the workflow, which you don't have to look at the workflow, but if the workflow is not correct, I'm going to send the request back to you. But you'll know there's the correct workflow if you see at least the originator. If you see at least one of the three. Some of you may only see one of the three because the originator and department head are skipped, but you should always see a dean unit director. So you'll see that there are names under each one of those approval steps, and they're all the same. We use this as our test request for contract administration. Does anybody have any questions on that? Is there anything else you want me to go over real quick, or I can turn it back over to Brian?
So there's a question on how do we initiate a request?
Okay. So to initiate a request, you should go to the ribbon and you'll see request and request contract. If you do not see this, that means that you don't have the correct AggieBuy role. Get in touch with me or Access and Security that set up the FD 806. I'm sorry, FD 805. and we will get your access set up for that. So again, that's the ribbon, request contract. And oh, you'll see I have several tests there. I type in my name. I'm sorry. This is just what I use for tests, but I like to use like maybe the vendor name, like if it's Dealers Electric and it's a service agreement or something like that. And this will always, I'm sorry, as of right now, this is the only option is contract request, and then you submit. And then I can send out instructions, a quick reference guide to go through this any further, or we can set up a one-on-one.
Could you go through and highlight some of the areas on each of those tabs and maybe what are some of the things that we most commonly have to send stuff back for?
Okay. The monetary, yes or no. Monetary is if it's an expense or revenue, that's monetary. If it's, and it does get mixed up quite often. If it's non-monetary, no money being exchanged, then you would answer no to that question. But you see when I answered yes, that a dollar value range came up and you would select your range. Revenue, is this a revenue contract? Yes or no? If it's an expense, you would answer no to this. Your scope of work, some people will copy the scope of work from the contract and paste it here. Some people say attached, and that's fine. New and existing contract. If you choose existing, you would enter the previous contract number. Start and end date is very important, and this is the start date of the contract, not the date that you're entering the request. If it says in the contract to update upon start, click that box. And then you would choose, every contract has an expiration date. We see it a lot where they don't put an expiration date, then we have to go look at the contract and see if it says 12 months, 5 years, whatever that says. And then if the supplier furnished a document, yes. If they did not, then you can select an award document from here. So that's just real quick on that first screen. The EIR, most of you know, if you're doing any kind of software or hardware purchases, you would select one of these options. And I'm going to select this purchase does not involve an EIR, but if you selected another option, it's going to bring up 2 more screens to answer. But I'm going to stick with this purchase does not involve an EIR for now. And because I selected an award document, you would fill in this information for the presentation agreement. If I selected that they provided a contract, you would not see the award document. And then the department information. So I'm going to select my system member. And we do see this a lot where the correct department is not selected. Then you would provide the contact name for the department. It may not be the person that's entering the request, it's the person in the department that is handling the contract. I'm not going to fill any of that out. And then your second party, these questions were added in December. This is new. So as far as the United States, and that'll add an export control stop in the workflow. You would provide the last four digits of the tax ID if you know it, if you find them in AggieBuy. And then you would provide the second party's contact name. So the person that we would reach out to if we had a question on a contract is the name that we want there. And then we won't go into talk about the back office. These are not required fields. And then once you're done, I'm sorry.
Do you still have the tuna on the avocado?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you know what? I want a BLT.
A BLT, okay. Yes, ma'am. BLT. Do you want everything on it? Mayonnaise, tomato, lettuce?
Sorry, Tammy, you're gonna have to reshare your screen. Had to mute everyone. Sorry, Tammy, you're gonna have to unmute yourself too.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, when you've entered all the information on your request, you'll have a green checkbox all the way through. And when you get to review and complete, then you'll hit complete request. And then it sends it to our contract administration request approval screen. And then either Lisa Payton or myself will go through the request and approve them. And then once it's through the approval steps, the contract will be created. Anything else?
You got a question in the chat about the second party? It's not the person, entity we're making an agreement with. It would be something like agent information, for example. So the second party screen is who is the other legal entity with which we're entering the agreement. So if we're entering the agreement with the agent, then they would be the second party. If it's going to be maybe a production company, or if it's the speaker themselves, then that's who we would enter there.
There is a question on the award document screen if they're being represented by an agent. If we answer yes, I thought it brought up another screen, sorry. Okay, I'm thinking of something else.
I don't know if it brings up another screen, but it is a separate template when they're being represented by an agent versus not.
Okay. And depending on how that agreement is written, they may list the second party, and you can change this to yes, there's more than one participating in the contract. And you would provide the information for the other second party included on the contract. I know Thomas Lemons has a lot of university press agreements where there could be 2 to 5 authors on a request. We can only enter up to 2, but he'll make a note in the discussion. He'll make me a note in the discussion with the other vendors so that they're included on the contract.
Are there any other questions about any of the fields on the contract request, or what happens after it's completed. What do you do when you have a person signing it, but actually needs to be routed to someone else to pass it on to the person signing? Just leave those notes in the discussion. If there are any specific logistical things about routing for signatures, that message will be passed along to the contract manager for when they set up the DocuSign envelope. There are ways to do that in DocuSign, so we just need that information entered somewhere in here, and the discussion is probably the best place to put that on the contract request. All right, we've got another question a little bit further up. Someone explain the difference in choosing a requisition or a contract. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. So this is the diagram that we had sent out on the listserv, and we hope to have it on our website soon. I blew it up a little bit, so excuse the pixelation of some of the text. But this summarizes a variety of the items that are listed across purchasing's website and contracts websites and what's in the rule. So if it's over $25,000, if you are spending over $25,000, then it needs to go on a requisition. If it's less than 25,000, but you're still spending money, we recommend a requisition, but you can put in a contract request as well. The only caveat to that one is software. So if you are purchasing software that has an end user license agreement or a master software agreement or any type of agreement, go ahead and submit that on a requisition. If it is not software and it is less than 25,000, then the discretion is left to the department to say, do you want to encumber these funds or not? If yes, they have to go on a requisition. The contract request does not encumber those funds in Famous on your account. It doesn't link with Famous in any way, shape, or form. So it's not going to issue a purchase order. It's not going to transfer to a requisition. It's not going to do any of that stuff. So that's the area where the department gets to make the decision. We recommend a requisition whenever you are spending money because it will encumber those funds within your account. It will be on the books. It will show up in open commitment reports. There's plenty of mechanisms on campus to capture that information. Once receiving is done by the department, then when invoices are entered that match the purchase order, what you ordered, it's very easy and quick to get through the approval path. Not only lessens the amount of time FMO and the department have to spend on that purchase, but it reduces the likelihood of prompt pay interest being paid from sitting in somebody's approval box. Well, everybody wants, their purchase as quick as they can. There is no time on the requisition. There's no time limit. Whereas on the invoice, as you all know, with the prompt pay laws, as soon as we receive that invoice or receive those products and goods, there's a clock that starts ticking. 21 days to dispute it, 30 days to pay it. So the more things that we can put on the requisition workflow, the easier and quicker that invoice workflow is. So that's why we recommend it that way. If it is a non-monetary agreement, there's no money exchanging hands, or if it's a revenue agreement, we are going to be receiving money for some reason or another, then a requisition would not be the best tool for that. Then we do want you to go ahead and submit that on a contract request. Does that make sense? Questions, comments, concerns? Oh, I lost my chat.
Brian,
Yeah.
can you answer Tracy Lacey's question?
What's the question? Sorry, as I shared my screen, I lost my chat box.
Does the contract manager have to be a CA staff?
Not necessarily. There are other operations on campus where a contract manager is someone else. So for example, if you submit your requisition and purchasing does a master order, they create a contract and the contract manager is somebody in procurement. There are some other places on campus where they have a very specific item that they're using, and that department is listed as the contract manager instead of contract administration. So no, it's not a hard and fast rule that CA has to be listed as the contract manager. But we could certainly talk about any situations that might not come through.
And Martin, are you talking about a contract request routing or signature for a contract?
It was a follow-up question on the routing that was related to sending a comment. And so I was just asking a clarifying question if after the envelope and routing has been set up and we know that something needs to change, what's the best process by which to notify contracts? Is that still through a comment, or is there a different process to do that?
You can send me an email or send a message in the discussion, but make sure I'm on the discussion. And I can get the routing updated for you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you talking about on DocuSign, Martin? I saw your little bolded after the envelope routing has been set
Yeah,
up.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if the DocuSign envelope has been sent and the vendor reaches out and says, no, we need it to go to our legal team first, or we need it to route to somebody on a CC, whoever's listed as your contract manager, you can either leave a comment on the contract or send them an email and just kind of say, hey, forward what you got from the vendor. We just got this information. It has to do with the DocuSign envelope, and then we'll take care of that.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
And then, are there any plans to have a more seamless experience for items requiring IT security review and IT accessibility for contracts, requisitions, and paying invoices? There's a lot of re-uploading and resharing of information. Each items are routed. Yep, that's kind of a frustrating experience. We're trying to streamline the security and accessibility review for contracts, at least by asking those questions up front. And then as far as requisitions are concerned, I think there's either an attachment that can be added, but they are automatically included in the workflows. I do know that IT is working on their own repository / system for security and accessibility, to where essentially you just have to add your approval number for purchasing. We won't need to know the answer to all those questions, just whether or not that number has been provided, and then IT security accessibility will just say, yep, that's in our file. There's still some logistics about that process we're going to work out. IT is working on those types of things. But yes, there are plans to make that process better for everyone involved. Got a direct message. Is there some type of training for beginners that I can take? Absolutely. We don't have anything in Train Track right now, but if you want to reach out to Tammy Prater for the contract requests, or if there's something else on the requisitions you'd like to learn, someone in purchasing or FMO could walk you through that as well. So please just reach out, and we're more than happy to work with you one-on-one to show you how things are done, why things are done, and answer any questions that you have. Yes, there are. So to Aurier's comment on DocuSign, whenever we send an envelope to the vendor, we're not necessarily always sending it to the person that is going to sign it. Sometimes we send it to the only point of contact we have. But with every envelope that we send, we include instructions on how to reassign that envelope to whoever needs to sign it. So those instructions are provided to the vendor up front. But if someone comes to us and says, hey, can you make this change? We're not going to argue with them or anything like that. We can make that change as well. Another message: if a faculty or principal investigator are wanting to create contracts or MOUs for their participants or contractors, is this something you all can review? We'd have to get a little bit more specifics on that situation. If it's for a PI and it's part of the study that they're doing, it may be processed by SRS, depending on who's funding the study and all kinds of other factors. But we'd be more happy to look at what you have to try to direct that to where it needs to go. Are there any other questions about the contract request itself? Any of the situations surrounding it? What happens when I submit? What happens after it's completed? How do I start the process? Those types of things? Or are y'all pretty satisfied? We did drop a link earlier in the chat to our quick reference guides that we have online. There are quite a few already out there if you don't know. And we plan to update those and add some. So stay tuned. Maybe bookmark that website if this is a process you interact with a lot. And we'll keep these things updated. What should we be doing with renewal emails that are sent out? So whenever you get a notification from AggieBuy that a contract is coming up for renewal, we will need to know whether y'all want to proceed with that renewal or not. You almost have to opt into it. So if we don't hear anything from the department, we're just going to let that agreement expire. So I would, if you know how to look up what contracts you have out there, to see who is the contact person that's listed and receiving those emails, we can certainly help you find those contracts. Because sometimes those notices, if there's been some turnover or somebody has left, AggieBuy is just screaming into the void that something is about to expire and nobody's being notified. So we can certainly help you update those contracts. But we will need to be notified that you want to extend or renew that. Like I said, otherwise it's going to expire. These are some good questions, y'all. All right. If there's no more questions, thank you all for your time. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to help y'all through some of these things. We'll stay on for a few more minutes just in case there's some more questions or somebody wants to ask something with less of an audience attending. But thank y'all so much for your time and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Ryan, I have a question. This is Darlene from Vet Med Teaching Hospital. I'm
Sure.
working home sick with COVID, so